So the last time we spoke, I spoke about understanding seasons. I want to continue that conversation about understanding seasons by talking about the importance of linking seasons and purpose. I want to start with the acronym I came up with for seasons, and that is strategically embracing all stops on new streets. Strategically engaging all stops on new streets, because every season we go through may have different stops along the way. And as I ended the last video, I spoke about the importance of linking seasons and purpose. Purpose is important. In this time that we're living in, God has purpose in everything you're going through. And so everything revolves around purpose. Again, we can go back to the principles of Ecclesiastes. If you are here, as in you are existing at the time I'm speaking, there is purpose for your existence. So the great question of life is not whether or not you have purpose, it is what is my purpose. We are all wired with purpose, and we know this. Rick Warren has written a fascinating book about the purpose-driven life. And I won't rehearse it, but I want to talk to you about purpose. The first thing is that purpose involves production. If you are going to be a purposeful person, you have to produce. Jesus, talking to his disciples in John 15, says, I wish that you bear fruit and that your fruit remains. The other thing about purpose is that purpose involves planning. In other words, when we are going to embrace and engage purpose, we must plan. We know many are the plans of a man's heart, James tells us, but it is God that brings them into fruition. So I'm not saying not to consult God, but I'm saying even after you consult God, you must be planning. It's important to understand that purpose also involves planting. When Jesus was prophesying of his death in the book of John, around John 12, thereabout, he said, except a grain of wheat or a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and die, it abides alone. Purpose has to be planted in order to reap a harvest, because Jesus continues in that scripture, but when it falls to the ground and dies, it increases in grain and it also produces a harvest. Your purpose must produce. God is saying to you today that it's time for you to move from activity to production. Your purpose must involve production. The next thing about purpose is that purpose may often involve pain. We often want to escape pain because we think when we go through pain, it is against our purpose. But God is saying in this time that even the pain you are going through has purpose. When Paul is providentially speaking about God's divine predestination, he says in Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for the good to those who are the called according to his purpose. So pain has purpose. The next thing I want to talk about purpose is that purpose is not the same as perfection. When Paul is writing in Philippians 3, he says, it's not that I have attained or already made perfect, but this one thing I do, I forget the things which are behind, and I press forward to those things which are ahead. What are you pressing forward to? Find a target and press towards it. You may not be perfect, none of us are, but ensure that you're operating in your purpose. The next thing about purpose is that purpose may not always involve or include peace. I know we've often been taught that when we're doing the right thing, we will have peace. That is not consistent with so much of the scripture. When we think of Job and the way that Job suffered, we know that there is indeed pain and lack of peace, but God's will is still to be effected. When Jesus was in the hull of the boat while his disciples were going through the tumult on the Sea of Galilee, they said, Master, you don't care that we perish? And Jesus didn't negotiate, he just simply said, peace, be still. In other words, your peace comes from not whether or not you're going through a storm. Your peace comes from knowing who is in your boat. If Jesus is in your boat, then it is okay. You will face storms, but if Jesus is in your boat, it is okay. And I want to encourage someone as I end this little nugget that when you are going through the valley, remember that it's not how you started or where you started, it is where you're heading. Purpose deals with the reality of the journey towards the destination that God has divinely orchestrated for you. So be encouraged. You may not feel like you're walking in purpose, but purpose is not a day walk, it is a daily walk. One love until we meet again.